Welcome back everyone to our channel where we dive deep into the most fascinating stories from the world of collectibles, rare coins, and hidden treasures. And today we have something absolutely incredible to talk about, something that continues to capture the imagination of both seasoned collectors and casual enthusiasts. Because we are going to unravel the story of how a single penny, a humble 1-cent coin from the year 1962, can carry a staggering price tag of up to $5 million. And yes, you've heard that right, $5 million for a single cent, which sounds almost unbelievable until you begin to understand the world of numismatics and how small mistakes, minting errors, and rare anomalies can elevate a coin from pocket change to a priceless artifact. So let's explore in extreme detail what exactly makes this particular coin so valuable, what types of errors and flaws collectors look for, why those flaws are so significant, and how possibilities of hidden treasures lurking in everyday change make stories like this so captivating, because when you hold an old penny, you might just be holding a fortune without even realizing it, and the case of the 1962 1-cent is the perfect example of this phenomenon, as it embodies the incredible unpredictability of minting processes and the obsessive passion of collectors who are always hunting for that once-in-a-lifetime discovery. So let's first think about what actually makes a coin valuable in general, because rarity is key, condition is critical, demand plays a huge role, but when it comes to error coins, what really pushes the value sky high are the unintentional mistakes that slip past the rigorous quality control at the United States Mint, and these mistakes can come in many forms, such as double die strikes where the coin's design appears to be duplicated and slightly shifted, giving a ghost-like effect. Off-center strikes where the image or text doesn't line up properly, leaving blank areas of metal visible, clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing due to an incomplete metal blank, die cracks and cuts where imperfections in the die leave raised marks or blobs of metal, or even wrong planchet strikes where a design meant for one denomination gets struck on the blank of another denomination, like a penny design accidentally ending up on a dime blank. And when you consider these types of errors in the context of the 1962 penny, you realize how many different varieties could exist, and how each variation could create a unique and one-of-a-kind piece that collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for, because in their eyes, the stranger and rarer the mistake, the more valuable the coin becomes. And this is where the 1962 1-cent finds its fame, as coins from this year have surfaced with spectacular errors that defy expectations, making them treasures in the world of numismatics. So imagine holding a coin in your hand and noticing that the date is doubled, or the lettering looks shadowed, or the Lincoln portrait is slightly shifted, creating a distorted appearance, and suddenly what was once worth only 1 cent is now valued at thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of dollars depending on how extreme and rare the error is. And part of what makes the 1962 penny so legendary is that this was a time in U.S. minting history when quality control was not as computerized or automated as it is today, meaning more opportunities for human error, machine malfunction, and unintentional anomalies to occur. And some of those mistakes created pieces so extraordinary that they are almost artworks in themselves. And when collectors discover such pieces, competition to own them drives the value through the roof, which is why we hear about certain 1962 pennies being valued at $5 million, not because every penny from that year is worth that much, but because the rarest examples with the most extraordinary errors represent a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that no serious collector wants to miss. And when we consider the types of errors specifically tied to this year, one of the most talked about is the double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," and the date, 1962, appear doubled, and these kinds of errors are extremely popular among collectors because they are so visually striking, easy to identify even with the naked eye, and relatively scarce, making them highly desirable. Another fascinating category is the off-center strike where the coin's design is not properly aligned with the blank, resulting in coins where Lincoln's portrait might be shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes leaving a large blank crescent of copper visible. And the more off-center the strike while still retaining a visible date, the more valuable the coin becomes. Then there are clipped planchets where part of the coin's circular shape is missing, looking as if someone took a bite out of the penny, and these also command high prices, especially when the clip is dramatic and the coin is otherwise in pristine condition. Additionally, there are transitional errors where coins might have been struck on leftover blanks from other years or denominations, creating hybrids that were never intended to exist, and these are among the rarest and most valuable of all. But the possibilities don't stop there, because coins can also exhibit repunched mint marks where the small letter denoting the mint location, such as D for Denver, was punched more than once by hand and slightly misaligned, creating a doubled or even tripled appearance. And these subtle yet significant details add to the allure and mystery of error coins. And when all these factors converge in a single 1962 penny, you have the potential for something extraordinary. Something that transcends its humble face value and becomes a collector's dream. And this is why the stories of $5 million pennies are not myths or exaggerations, but rather reflections of the incredible passion and financial power within the numismatic world, where collectors are willing to pay anything to secure a piece of history that is unlike any other. And beyond the technical errors themselves, there is also the broader cultural and historical context to consider, because 1962 was a significant period in American history. The height of the Cold War, the space race was underway, John F. Kennedy was president, and the Lincoln cent, already a beloved and iconic coin, carried the weight of national identity. So when a coin from this particular year emerges with a rare and spectacular error, it feels like a snapshot of that moment in history, preserved in metal, and that emotional and historical connection amplifies its appeal and value. So it is not only the mistake itself but also the story it tells that makes the coin priceless. And collectors love stories. They love being able to say they own a piece of history that no one else has, and this drives up demand and competition, which in turn drives up value. And as we reflect on all this, it is fascinating to think that such treasures could be hiding in plain sight, because error coins are often discovered by ordinary people, by someone emptying a jar of old change, or by a curious child looking through a piggy bank, and suddenly realizing that the odd-looking penny they found could be worth more than a house. And this possibility adds an element of adventure to collecting, turning it into a treasure hunt where anyone, anywhere, could stumble upon a life-changing discovery. And that is part of the magic of the 1962 penny story, because while not every coin is worth millions, the possibility that one might be is enough to inspire collectors and dreamers alike. So if you ever come across an old penny from 1962, take a moment to look closely at it, examine the date, the lettering, the portrait, the shape, because you never know what you might find. And who knows, maybe you will be the next person to uncover a $5 million treasure hiding in your pocket change. And even if you don't, the journey of learning about these coins, appreciating their history, and understanding the quirks of minting errors is rewarding in itself, because it connects you to a broader community of collectors, historians, and enthusiasts who share the same excitement and passion. And as you dive deeper into this world, you begin to realize that coins are more than just money. They are artifacts, artworks, mistakes frozen in time, and sometimes they are priceless treasures waiting to be discovered. And as we wrap our minds around the astonishing case of the 1962 1 cent being worth millions because of its peculiar errors, misstrikes, doubled dies, and rare anomalies, it is only natural to slide further back in time by a single year to another equally jaw-dropping story, that of the 1961 1 cent coin, which in some unique circumstances has fetched valuations soaring as high as $6 million. And this too is no ordinary tale, because we are not talking about a regular Lincoln cent you could find in any pocket change, but about extraordinary specimens that left the Denver Mint with unusual flaws, peculiar misalignments, or freak occurrences during production. And these errors turned what was meant to be 1 cent of currency into an astronomical treasure. And when we speak of the 1961 penny, we are speaking of one of the most hunted dates among collectors because of its legacy of mint mark anomalies, mispunched errors, and off-metal strikes, all of which contribute to making some examples worth more than the most exotic gemstones. And just like with the 1962 penny, The first thing that gives the 1961 D coin its immense value is its scarcity in specific error forms, because while billions of regular 1961 pennies were struck, particularly at the Denver Mint marked by the tiny D under the date, only a handful of errors managed to slip past the inspectors and make it into circulation, and among these, some are so remarkable that their market value skyrocketed over the years until they reached the unbelievable figure of $6 million, and one of the prime reasons behind this is the notorious repunched mint mark variety that appears on the 1961 D pennies, because back then the mint marks were applied by hand, punched directly into the dies, and in some cases, the engravers accidentally punched the D more than once, slightly off from the first impression, creating what is known as a D over D variety. And while such coins might sound like small details to the untrained eye, to collectors they are among the most fascinating pieces of history, because each variation is unique and visually distinct, and some are rarer than others, and as such, the demand for them is fierce, and this fierce demand combined with rarity fuels astronomical valuations, and in the specific case of the most extreme 1961 D mint mark errors, combined perhaps with a dramatic off-center strike, or an unusual planchet mistake, the coin becomes a one-of-a-kind specimen, and that uniqueness is what drives wealthy collectors to bid millions in auctions just for the privilege of owning something no one else has. And we should also consider that 1961 was itself a remarkable year historically. It was the dawn of the 1960s. John F. Kennedy had just been inaugurated as President of the United States. America was fully engaged in the Cold War and the space race. And the Lincoln cent had already become one of the most recognizable and collected coins in U.S. history, so a coin from that pivotal year that carries extraordinary errors is more than just money, it is a tangible artifact of history, a piece of that early 60s era locked forever in copper, and that narrative too adds immense weight to its value, because collectors don't just buy coins for the metal, or even just for the error. They buy them for the stories they hold. And when you hold a 1961 D penny that has a spectacular error, you are holding a piece of minting history, American history, and numismatic lore all at once, and that triple layer of significance makes the coin priceless in the eyes of serious buyers. And let's not forget the technical side of the Denver Mint at that time, where the sheer volume of coins being produced sometimes meant small mistakes could slip through, such as double dies where the lettering and numbers on the obverse appear duplicated, or even dramatic die cracks that run across Lincoln's portrait like scars, and these striking visual elements add to the rarity and allure, making them especially appealing to collectors who love coins with bold, easy-to-see errors. And when such an error occurs on a coin with a repunched mint mark from 1961 D, you have a combination that is so rare that perhaps only a handful exist. And when rarity reaches that level, it becomes nearly impossible to assign a fixed value, because collectors will simply bid against each other until the price is astronomical, sometimes surpassing even $6 million. And this is why the 1961 D penny, though seemingly ordinary to most people, is in fact a legend in numismatics, because it demonstrates how the tiniest details, like a repunched D mint mark or a double die date, can elevate something from 1 cent to a fortune. And this story is not just about money, it's also about possibility. Because once again we are reminded that these treasures could be hiding in plain sight, in jars of old change, in dusty drawers, in forgotten piggy banks, and the thrill of knowing that the next multimillion-dollar penny could be sitting unnoticed in someone's home is what keeps collectors and enthusiasts searching every single day. And that is the magic of coins like the 1961 D 1 cent, because they transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. They show us that history, art, chance, and luck can combine in such a way that a tiny copper disc becomes more valuable than a mansion. And just like the 1962 cent that has been valued at $5 million, the 1961 D cent stands as a testament to the mysteries and wonders of minting errors, and the relentless passion of those who seek them. And so whenever you come across a penny with a D mint mark from 1961, take a closer look, inspect the details carefully, because you never know if you are holding the next $6 million treasure. A mistake from the mint that has turned into a miracle for the lucky collector who recognizes it. And moving forward in this thrilling journey through the most astonishing stories of rare pennies worth unimaginable sums, after exploring the $5,001,962 cent and the $6 million 1961 D cent, we now come to yet another fascinating chapter in numismatic history, the case of the 1964 D 1 cent coin. A small copper coin struck at the Denver Mint, which in its ordinary form is just one of billions made, but in its extraordinary error-laden form has been appraised and valued at a staggering $3 million, a number that makes most people's jaws drop, because how could something so common suddenly become so priceless? And yet when you begin to uncover the world of minting errors, anomalies, and freak accidents during production, you start to realize why collectors go wild over coins like the 1964 D penny, and what makes them so unbelievably valuable, because first and foremost, the Denver Mint during the early 1960s was a place of massive coin output, producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents each year to meet the demands of circulation, and in 1964 alone, well over 1 billion pennies were struck across different mints, so the vast majority are totally ordinary, worth face value or maybe a few cents if pristine, but the tiny handful that slip through with spectacular errors are the ones that make the headlines and drive collectors into frenzies. And the 1964 D penny is especially famous for certain doubled die varieties and repunched mint marks, because as with the 1961 D, the mint mark, D, was still being punched by hand into the die during that period, and so errors in alignment, repunching, and accidental overlaps were not uncommon, creating unusual varieties that today are sought after by collectors. And in the case of the most dramatic 1964 D specimens, the D mint mark appears repunched in such a way that it is bold, doubled, or oddly shaped, and these details, while small, elevate the coin into something extraordinary. But beyond mint marks, 1964 D cents are also known for striking errors like off-center strikes, where the design is shifted and part of the blank shows, or die cracks that run across the coin's surface, leaving raised scars of metal that collectors find fascinating, and most remarkable of all are the wrong planchet errors, where the coin was accidentally struck on a blank meant for a different denomination. For example, a cent struck on a dime planchet, making the coin thinner, lighter, and silvery in color rather than the usual copper, and those types of errors are so rare and so visually striking that they instantly become million-dollar coins when found in good condition. And this is one of the reasons why the 1964 D penny in certain error forms is worth up to $3 million, because it combines rarity, historical significance, and visual intrigue all in one. And speaking of history, 1964 was a landmark year in American culture and politics, with the Civil Rights Act signed into law, the escalation of the Vietnam War, and the continuing legacy of President Kennedy's assassination in 1963 still heavy on the nation, so a coin from this pivotal year that carries a rare error feels to collectors like a physical relic of that moment, a way to hold the 1960s in your hand. And when you add that historical aura to the uniqueness of a minting error, the result is a coin that becomes far more than money. It becomes a story, a tangible piece of the past, and collectors, especially those with deep pockets, will pay anything to own such stories, which is why auction records for coins like this often leap into the millions. And while many ordinary 1964 D pennies exist, the few that stand out with extraordinary errors are the ones people dream about, because the idea that a tiny copper coin, smaller than a bottle cap, could be worth $3 million is almost like magic. And yet it is real, and it shows us again why numismatics is such a fascinating world, because treasures